Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Physiology Learning. Now today we are going to discuss about the EEG and sleep. It is not ECG, it is EEG and sleep. So we are discussing in our CNS lecture wherein we are discussing the higher function, and today's lecture will be on the EEG and sleep. So coming to the learning objectives of this video, we are going to discuss in details about the EEG, what is EEG, and waves of EEG, what are the various different waveforms of EEG. Then sleep and its types, and sleep cycle, how does the sleep cycle happen, and some of the theories of sleep. Then finally some of the disorders and their treatment of sleep, like sleep disorders and their treatment. So let's get into the topic. So coming to EEG and its waves. So what is EEG? EEG is nothing but an electroencephalogram. It is recorded from the brain matter, so that's why it is called as electroencephalogram. So usually if the recording is done on the surface of the scalp, it is called as EEG or scalp recording. Then sometimes what neurosurgeons do, whenever they are operating, sometimes they want to place some leads over the surface of the pia mater. So whenever it is placed on the pia mater, it is called as the electrocorticogram. There we don't use the term electroencephalogram, it is electrocorticogram because it is directly placed over the cortex. So these are recordings of the dendritic potentials. They are not recording the action potentials. They are recording all the combination of the dendritic potentials. That is, they are basically recording the summation of all the EPSPs, that is excitatory postsynaptic potentials, and the inhibitory IPSPs, that is inhibitory postsynaptic potentials. So basically they will summate all of this and record the dendritic potentials that is created by the neurons in the brain matter. So this was first done by a scientist called as Hans Berger. The scientist name is Hans Berger. That's why some of the people they refer EEG waves as Berger's wave. That is, they refer it as Berger's waves. So what is the different waveforms that is seen in an EEG? There are 5 most important waveforms that is seen in an EEG depending upon the condition or the activity of the brain. So we have written it on the order of decreasing frequency. So basically we will start with the waves which are having the higher frequency and keep on reducing the frequency depending upon the wave and come down to the frequency which is on the lower side. Then whenever the frequency is decreasing, what will happen to the amplitude? So whenever there are in higher frequency, we will not be having adequate amplitude. But when the frequency is decreasing, the waves will be recorded like this and we will have a high amplitude. So the order of EEG waves that is discussed here, there is decrease in frequency and increase in amplitude. So we can remember it is like G, BAT, D. So this is the order that we are going to study, G, BAT, D. So coming to what is this G, starting with the G, they are called as gamma waves. This gamma waves happens and they are having the highest frequency. When do you need a highest frequency? Suppose you are listening to this lecture and you are focusing full attention and you are giving the full attention to the video. Then you will have a gamma wave. Then you will be having a gamma wave which is on the focused attention. Then if you are listening to it but you are not giving your fullest attention, then what will happen? The frequency comes down. The frequency comes down to 14 to 30 Hz. And here the person is awake, the wakefulness is the seen, but it is not giving a focused attention. The waveform that is maximum contributed for this beta waves is from the paretofrontal areas. Then coming to the alpha waves. Alpha wave happens whenever we are closing our eyes and the external stimuli is inhibited, like maximum external stimuli are inhibited. So their frequency is around 8 to 13 and it is a resting state. Here the eye is closed. Here the person is not sleeping yet. He is not going to sleep yet. He is just resting and with eyes closed. So these waves are generated in the parieto-occipital area. Then coming to the next set of waves which is called as the theta waves. This theta waves is generally not seen. It is only seen whenever the person is having the transition from awakefulness to the sleep state. The delta waves is the one which is present in a deep sleep state. It is the one which is having the lowest frequency and the highest amplitude, and it is seen whenever the person is having a very deep sleep. So these are the various different waves of EEG. So now let's discuss about the sleep and its type. What is sleep? Sleep is a state of loss of consciousness from which a person can be aroused. This is the most important point to be noted. If a person in coma, he is also looking like as if he is sleeping. But in that person, we will not be able to waken him up with an appropriate stimuli. Whereas in the sleep, we can wake him up with an appropriate stimuli. That is the difference between a sleep and a coma. So whenever you are doing the sleep studies, what we will do? We will do various recordings. But three most important recordings that is required for classifying the sleep into two different groups. These recordings include, one is the brain activity should be measured. What will help us to measure the brain activity? That is the one which we saw previously, that is the EEG, electroencephalogram. And the eye movements should be recorded with the help of EOG, that is called as electrooculogram, that is recording the eye movements. Then the muscle tone will be measured by the EMG, that is electromyogram. So these are the three most important things required for us to classify the sleep into NREM sleep and REM sleep. What is NREM sleep? NREM sleep is called as non-rapid eye movement sleep, and REM sleep is called as rapid eye movement sleep. So these are the three important recordings that we have to do. But whenever we are doing a polysomnography, other than this also we will do some recordings. That is the oxygen saturation monitoring and the ECG. So both these recordings also will be included along with the previous three recordings for a complete polysomnography studies. So coming to the classification of sleep, the first one, that is the non-rapid eye movement sleep or the NREM sleep. This NREM sleep is also called as the orthodoxical sleep. Orthodoxical means it is the proper sleep that the person is taking. And it is also called as slow wave sleep, and it is also called as the quiet sleep. So these are the other names for NREM sleep. And there are several stages in NREM sleep. Previously, the stages were classified as 1, 2, 3 and 4. 4 stages of sleep. Then they saw that the stage 3 and 4 both are having the same kind of activity. So they grouped it together to call it into one stage. And now the present classification is N1, N2, N3. Here, what does the N stand for? The N stand for nothing but NREM sleep. NREM sleep 1, 2 and 3. So what happens in a N1 sleep? Now, whenever the lecture is boring, what will happen? First, we will be closing our eyes. So whenever you are closing the eyes and not external stimuli is not affecting you, what will happen? From the beta wave is in the wakeful state. From the beta wave, first there will be appearance of an alpha wave. That is, the person is not sleeping, he is just closing his eyes. Then the transition towards the sleep happens. I told you the theta waves happens during the transitions. So from the alpha wave, the theta wave comes in. Then after that, the N2 stage starts. This N2 stage is called as the first true stage of the sleep. Here only the sleep begins actually. So this N2 stage, how do they identify? The scientists identify this stage of the sleep with the help of two recordings that are seen in an EEG. The EEG will have classically, that is the sleep spindles. They will have sleep spindles. I'll tell you what is sleep spindles, and one more thing important, that is called as K complexes. K complexes. What is this sleep spindles? These sleep spindles will have a very specific set of waves which is produced during that period. This waves is also called as sigma waves. And the frequency of this waves is 10 to 14, and it is for a very short duration, that is 0.5 to 1.5 seconds, and it is of the amplitude 50 to 100 microvolt. So this is a characteristic sigma wave which is seen in a second stage of the N2 or the non-REM sleep 2. Then another one which is called as a K complex. What is K complex? These are biphasic voltage. Usually you don't see a biphasic voltage in an EEG except for the K complex. These are biphasic high voltage waves which are present in an EEG. Then this is the first true stage of sleep. Then the person goes in for a very deep sleep. Whenever he goes in for a very deep sleep, what wave is going to appear? The delta wave is going to appear. Whenever the delta wave comes for more than 50% of the sleep cycle, then it is called as the deep sleep. That is, the person is in a very deep sleep. So this is all about the non-rapid eye movement sleep. Now coming to the REM sleep. What happens in REM sleep? In REM sleep, as already we know, there is rapid eye movement. So that is important. The REM sleep is also called as paradoxical sleep, active sleep, or a superficial sleep. It is called paradoxical. So why it is paradoxical? Here the person is sleeping, but my EEG is showing me as if he is awake. So that's why this is called as paradoxical sleep. What is the paradox here? The person is actually sleeping, but his brain activity is as if the person is awake. So this is resembling an awake state. There is a rapid low voltage waves produced. This rapid low voltage which is produced in a REM sleep is called as the PGO spikes. What is PGO spikes? It is the pontogeniculo-occipital spikes. There is an extensive brain activity in these particular areas. And what is the neurotransmitter which is involved in this activity? There is an increased amount of acetylcholine, that is ACH, which is causing this PGO spikes. So now coming to the differences between NREM sleep and REM sleep. So the brain activity is decreased obviously in case of an NREM sleep, whereas the brain activity seems to be very high in case of an REM sleep, increased. The heart rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate and sexual arousal all are decreased in case of a non-REM sleep, but in case of a REM sleep all these are increased. Then coming to the muscle tone, the muscle tone is intact. The muscle tone is intact in case of a non-REM sleep, whereas the muscle tone is reduced. It is causing an hypotonia in case of a REM sleep, except for two muscles. What are the two muscles? One, you are already guessed it, eye movement, so ocular muscles, and another muscle I don't want to go into hypotonia because the person will die. What is the most important muscle? That muscle is the diaphragm, because we need to provide respiration during sleep also. So diaphragm. So these two group of muscles does not go in for hypotonia. Then threshold for arousal, it is less in case of non-REM sleep. You can easily wake up a person from non-REM sleep, but the threshold for arousal is more in case of a REM sleep. Coming to the dream, usually the current life events come as dream in case of a non-REM sleep. So they come under non-current life events. Whereas the REM dreams are emotional and highly visual. They are emotional and highly visual, because as you can see here, there is an activation of the occipital region in the PGO spikes. Occipital region has the primary and secondary visual cortices. So that's why these are emotional and highly visual. So these are the basic differences between an NREM and a REM sleep. Now coming to the sleep cycle. As we have a day-night cycle for an entire 24-hour period, which is called as the circadian rhythm. In a similar manner, the sleep also goes in a rhythm, which is that is a transition between a non-REM sleep and a REM sleep. This is called as ultradian rhythm. This is called as ultradian rhythm. What happens in ultradian rhythm? First, the person starts from an NREM sleep and he goes through various phases. He goes through stage 1, 2, 3, that is N1, N2, N3. And again it will reverse in 3, 2, 1, and then he will have a REM period. After this there will be repetition of the same cycle. So as you can see here, the stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and it goes reverse and finally followed by a REM sleep. So this is what happens in every sleep cycle. So one cycle of duration will have around about 90 minutes. 90 minutes. So as and when the person is sleeping and it is progressing through over the night, the duration of REM is increasing. And which is the master clock which is regulating all the sleep cycle? It is nothing but the suprachiasmatic nucleus. We have already seen in the discussion of hypothalamus, that is the suprachiasmatic nucleus of the hypothalamus, which is present in the anterior group of the hypothalamus. It is very important for a master clock. So suprachiasmatic nucleus is the master regulator. And there is one more substance which is important for regulating the sleep activity, that is the melatonin, which comes from the pineal gland. So what has happened? There is a specific tract called as retinohypothalamic tract. What is retinohypothalamic tract? From the retina, whenever the visual cues or the light is coming, what will happen? They will go to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And whenever the person is awake and he is having the stimulus of light, what will happen? The melatonin secretion will be reduced. So the person is staying awake. But whenever we close our eyes and the suprachiasmatic nucleus is not getting the impulses from the retinohypothalamic nucleus, what is going to happen? The levels of melatonin is going to increase and he is going to go in for a sleep. So the tract is retinohypothalamic tract. Now coming to the various theories of sleep. There are several theories for sleep that has been proposed and all of them are true. We cannot deny most of them. And the most important among them is the neuronal theory of sleep, which we will discuss in the next slide. There are other theories which are simple theories, that is called as the passive theory of sleep. So what is passive theory of sleep? So as and when the person is awake, which is causing the awake activity in a person, that is a reticular activating system. There is a specific system in the body that is called as reticular activating system, which keeps the person or the body awake. So whenever this reticular activating system goes in for fatigue, what will happen? The sleep will happen. So that is what the passive theory says. And there is something called as metabolic homeostatic theory. When as and when so many metabolites, the brain activity is increasing and there are production of metabolites. So when these metabolites are excessive in their quantity, what will happen? The person will sleep. So the metabolites that are increasing are nonapeptide, muramyl peptide and melatonin. What they will do is all of them will go and stimulate the ventrolateral-preoptic nucleus. This ventrolateral-preoptic nucleus is the one which is inducing this sleep pattern or sleep behavior. It is a part of a preoptic nucleus. How did they identify this metabolic theory? There is an interesting study. What they did is they sleep deprived an animal like a sheep. They collected the CSF from it. Obviously, this CSF will have a lot of metabolites like the nonapeptide and muramyl peptide. Then they injected that into another sheep which was awake. Then the second sheep, it suddenly went into sleep. So what does it say? These are the metabolites which are getting accumulated and they are inducing sleep in a normal person also. So that was how the metabolic theory was identified. So coming to the fourth mechanism of sleep, which is called as flip-flop mechanism. Flip-flop mechanism is very simple. So whenever there is an activation of VLPO, by any means the person will go in for a sleep. So as and when the VLPO activity increases, the person will go for a sleep. But whenever the activity of other nucleus like a locus coeruleus or a raphe nuclei, these are awake centers. Whenever the locus coeruleus or the raphe nuclei are active, they will cause an awake state. And the transition between these flip-flop, this flip-flop is like a seesaw. Whenever a VLPO is activated more, what will happen? The person will go for a sleep or the vice versa. There is one important substance which switches in this flip-flop mechanism. That is done with the help of orexins. So orexins does the switching between these two flip-flop states. Now let's discuss more about the most important theory, that is the neuronal theory of sleep. So coming to the discussion of neuronal theory of sleep. For the awakefulness, I told you we need the reticular formation. This reticular formation give impulses to the REM on cells and REM off cells. Whenever the REM on cells are activated, the person will go in for a REM sleep. Whenever they are switched off, the person will go in for an awake state. This switching on happens with the help of nucleus called as pedunculopontine nucleus. And what is it going to produce? It is going to produce the ACH. Already we saw it in the PGO spikes itself. The ACH is the most important for the REM sleep. So whenever ACH is produced, the person is going for a REM sleep. Whereas on the other hand, the REM off cells, they are getting activated by the tubulomammillary nuclei, locus coeruleus and raphe nucleus. This tubulomammillary nucleus produces a very specific substance called as a histamine. So the histamine, norepinephrine produced by the locus coeruleus and serotonin produced by the raphe nucleus, all of them will switch off the REM. So whenever all these neurotransmitters are high, what are they going to do? They are going to switch off the REM. So let's discuss further about the neuronal theory. The brainstem nucleus in the RAS, whenever the activity of norepinephrine and serotonin is increased and ACH is decreased, what is going to happen? The person will be awake because I need an increased amount of ACH for putting them into the REM sleep. So whenever the opposite activity happens, that is a decrease in norepinephrine and decrease in serotonin, increase in ACH, the person will go in for REM sleep. So this is the switching between a wakingness and the REM sleep. There are other centers for the non-REM sleep. For the non-REM sleep, we have something called as the circadian centers. There are various other centers which are called as circadian centers. And whenever inhibitory neurotransmitter like GABA is produced, for example, if GABA is produced, they are going to produce a non-REM sleep. So whenever GABA is increased, they are going to produce a non-REM sleep. And whenever GABA is increased, there is usually seen a decrease in histamine. On the other hand, whenever there is an increase in histamine and a decrease in GABA, the person will be in an awake state. So this is the group of activity which happens between the non-REM sleep and the REM sleep. Now coming to the sleep disorders. The sleep disorders are basically classified into parasomnias and dysomnias. Parasomnias and dysomnias. What is parasomnia? Parasomnia means it is the abnormality during sleep, waking up or going to sleep. There is no actual sleep disorder. It is not an actual sleep disorder. These are the disorders which are happening inside the sleep or when the person is sleeping. The parasomnias include bruxism. What is bruxism? Bruxism is nothing but teeth grind. So some of the time there is grinding of teeth during sleep. That is called as bruxism. And enuresis is nothing but the bed wetting. And there is something called as sleep talking and sleep walking also. Sleep talking, medically we call it as somnoloky. And sleepwalking is called as somnambulism. So both of this activity happens during sleep. So these are the parasomnias present. And one more parasomnia that can happen is periodic limb movement. These are the activities which is not affecting the quality or the quantity of the sleep, but they are happening during sleep. That's why it is called as parasomnias. On the other hand, we have the dysomnias wherein the quality or the timing of sleep is compromised. So the examples for this is insomnia. The person is not able to sleep properly or he is not able to initiate the sleep. It is called as insomnia. Hypersomnia, he is having excessive sleepiness, that is called hypersomnia. And narcolepsy, this is an excessive daytime sleepiness. The person is having an excessive daytime sleepiness. It might be due to an insomnia also. And sleep apnea. So all this are comes under the dysomnias. So let's see some of the treatment for sleep disorders. The first and foremost treatment that can be given is light therapy, because if we are watching light in the night also, the brain activity or the suprachiasmatic nucleus cannot keep up with the circadian rhythm. So the first thing is light therapy, and there is a component which resembles very similar to that of a melatonin, but it is more effective than a melatonin, which is called as ramelteon. This can induce the sleep. And there is a sedative hypnotic which has been used for sleep disorders, that is called zolpidem. And especially for the narcolepsy, there is a drug called as modafinil which can be used for an excessive daytime sleepiness. It will keep the person awake in the morning so that they can get a better sleep at night. So that drug is called as modafinil. I hope it's clear. Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel for more such videos. Thank you so much.